Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Ellen Green Party series. I am your host, David Rych. Just waiting on our co-host, Qyjon, the icon artist. He is going to come on. He has a history in criminology, criminal justice degree, I believe. We're going to talk about policing in America today. It's a subject that is very dear to my heart, especially with all that's been going on the last many years. I spent hours a week for the last, I don't know, 2.5, 3 years researching policing in America. Yeah, we have a comment section on the right there. Please feel free to add any comments. Please try to keep them civil and polite. But I mean, because this is going to get this might be a controversial issue. I mean, this is definitely a very divided line. Some people are very much on either side of this issue. Um, and I will start by saying that I'm not necessarily anti-cop, but if you listen to what I have to say about current standards and methods of policing in America, I think you'll be quite appalled. The history of it and everything else. But we're waiting him. He's stuck in traffic. He said he'd be on by 7:05 and 7:04, so I thought I'd start. We already got 3 viewers there. Hello. Feel free to say hello there. Any comments? You want to fill in some time? Hopefully he'll be here any time now. It is 7:05, so hopefully he can make it. So yeah, that'll be cool. But yeah, so just to start off with the history of it real quick, and I'm going to end up repeating myself when Qyjon comes on the show. American policing started. There was a little bit of a distinction between the northern part states and the southern states. In the southern states, it was almost specifically and only about local governments, local people, private citizens hiring people to go out and capture runaway slaves because it was illegal to be a runaway slave. So that was the inception of police departments in the South in this country. In the North, it was that and just kind of taking undesirables off the streets, if you will, drunken people, blah blah blah, prostitutes, so on. But anyway, it was just nothing but utter thuggery. Remember, the definition of thug is a violent person, and police are trained to be violent people. Ergo, which is a logical conclusion indicator, cops are violent and cops are thugs. So anyway, there's something about the whole idea of policing that I think that each community needs some sort of guardianship for sure. I mean, that goes all the way back to even Plato in his Republic. He talked about guardians of the city. There are bad people within communities. There are bad people outside of communities who want to do harm to said communities. There's no doubt. And we need a group of people to deal with that. Is the current policing structure system the way to go about it? Probably not. It's astonishing how many police forces, different types of forces and task forces we have. It's ridiculous. The militarization of the police is a big, huge problem. I mean, the military actually sells things it's not using, like tanks and bazookas and all sorts of crap, to local police departments for them to use on, you guessed it, us. And the kicker is, after you've listened to everything I have to say on this show, the kicker is we pay them to treat us like this. 100% of their funding comes from tax dollars. Yeah, it's true. However, there is a glimmer of hope. It turns out that actually individuals within communities can do something. I will, to quote a deputy chief from a sheriff's department, I won't say that what county or what the name of the cop is, but I interviewed this person on my radio show a couple years ago, and this person said, "We get our authority over you from you. Remember, this is still a democracy. This is still a place where the people are supposed to, be the government in an indirect sort of way. It's a representative democracy, a republic, basically. But like mayors of villages and stuff, they appoint the chief of police. They hire them, and the mayor can say, "We want that cop fired," and they have to do it. And so, like, it's basically, if you get enough people within a community to cause an uproar and say, "Hey, this cop is no good. We don't like this guy. We don't like the way he treats us. We don't like." He will get fired. He has to be. That the people still have the final say. And a lot of cops don't understand that. I saw a video once of a cop saying to a guy who was recording the whole situation, that we don't answer to you. And I'm like, whoa, yes, you quite directly and specific, not directly, but quite specifically do answer to us. We can, and we have, and we will get you canned. and we can even press charges against you. That's happening a lot more. I've noticed a lot more in the last couple of years when I've been watching these videos and reading the articles. A lot of cops are going to jail ever since George. I mean, I don't know about before George Floyd. How many? Probably far less. I'm assuming. I mean, do you think that if stuff didn't get like destroyed and burned down, that Derek Chauvin would have gone to jail? Do you think so? Comment on the right there. So yeah, so we're at a point now where the police department starts, and Biden ran on part of his platform was to overly fund the police. He was all for it. He said absolutely he will not defund the police. That's ridiculous. There's no doubt that local communities are across the nation are defunding the police station and reallocating those funds to mental health experts who can deal with these situations much better than cops can. I can't even count on two hands the amount of things I've heard about within the last year of cops shooting mentally ill people. Autistic child. The mother called the cops on her autistic child because she couldn't handle him at a moment because he was having some sort of episode. Well, they showed up and they killed him. And we have.
Sorry, I'm late.
Oh, that is okay. I've just been kind of talking to whoever was listening. How are you?
I'm good. I'm thankful to be invited back.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad to have you. But last time didn't work out, perfectly well. We had a little bit of an interruption. So once I came to the conclusion I was going to have a show about policing in America, I'm like, hey, I know exactly who I want on this show. So let's get some small talk out of the way. How you doing?
I am good. Trying to get the right angle. Okay, there it is. But I'm good. I cannot complain. You know what I mean? How about yourself?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Keeping very busy. I do horticulture as my main profession, so tis the season. So I'm around just like gardening and getting dirty. So yeah.
That's a good profession to have. You know what I mean? I wish I knew more about growing my own food or vegetables or whatever you're growing. I wish I knew some more about that.
It's pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's very fulfilling. Very cool. Tell us real quick about your art, because I know you have that beautiful piece behind you, and it says Qyjon. Do you pronounce it Qyjon or Qyjon?
It's Qyjon.
Qyjon. Okay.
And my artist name is Qyjon the Icon.
The Icon. There you go.
Yeah, my art. Most of my art can be described as a visual criminology. I have a lot of criminal justice themes within my artwork. That's not all I do. I'm a collage artist at heart, a collagist. So I make a bunch of different art pieces, but most of them can be considered collage work. I like to make furniture, things of that nature, because I like for my art to have a practical use, which is what separates me from a lot of other artists, is that you can use most of the things that I make. They're not just visually stimulating, but they can actually be used in the home. I make, chairs, liquor cabinets, grandfather clocks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. When I say make, mostly repurpose, but I can make, tables and stuff by hand and things of that nature. But yes, I do a lot of visual criminology though. People come to me for like, war on drugs, art pieces and things like that. So
that's very cool and very apropos for the topic for this evening, which is policing in America. I was just sort of catching people up on some very general explanation of the history of it. It's inception in this country.
Yes.
Where police departments in this country in the South were started almost exclusively to hunt down runaway slaves.
100%.
Okay, hunting down, because to be a runaway slave was illegal. Okay,
yes.
Okay. So we needed police to get them. In the North, it was some of that in some places, but a lot of it also had to do with just sort of getting undesirables off the street. Drunkards, prostitutes, that kind of thing. Anyway, either way, it didn't seem like a very noble beginning.
Well, the policing as a whole, the whole ideology is even if you go further back than modern, and I don't want to say modern day slavery, but if you go back further than slavery in America, any type of police force is based off of the ideas put forth by the king, right? So no matter what army, no matter what police force, whatever, however way you want to look at it, it's going to be controlled by whoever's controlling society, right? So you mentioned drunkards, prostitutes. There's always going to be an occupying force carrying out the will of the king, and I don't think many people connect that to mass incarceration. You know what I mean?
No, that's beautifully said. I love that. I thought we would real quick. Albert Shaw is watching. He said, read a few accounts of officers dealing with deaf individuals, and the officers elevate the situation when they are just being signed to, which the force was taught basic signs to communicate. I actually saw a video of a cop pulled over a woman and she had kids in her car. She was deaf and he did not care. The kids are crying, he's yelling, screaming at her, and they're like, she's deaf, she's deaf. He's like, I don't care. What do you mean you don't care? But that's just stupid. I
Yeah.
mean, she got arrested for basically obstruction of justice. She was let go and charges were dropped because it was ridiculous. But just the fact that they all had to go through that, it was a terrifying experience. I mean, the whole thing was on, and this is off his body cam.
Well, once again, if you can conceptualize policing from the standpoint of carrying out, you know what I mean, the ideology of the overarching society, you can see that, because how many things are, adapted for deaf people in society?
Very, very few.
Right? So that's just the manifestation of that. So that police officer, I would, he's obviously not, the most nice person. 100%, he's not a good guy, but he's allowed to do that because of us as a society as well, not caring about the deaf, right? It's a stretch, but it makes sense, because if you think about it, how much sign language were you taught in school?
None.
Okay, so then how much you think the cops were? How much?
I learned the alphabet on my own.
Yeah, but see, you're on your own. So the overarching society has no vested interest in helping us communicate with the deaf. So why would our police force? Right. So it's that's how I look at situations like that. It's still upsetting. It's still wrong, but you got to look at the overarching society, because that's what the police are here to do. They're here to carry out the will of those who control what's going on.
That is absolutely correct, and a lot of these sort of mores and these cultural standards are nothing more than a cultural standard. Like when I think of
100%.
Morality in the big M general sense, I think of like universal morals, things that apply to all people all the time. But now when you're talking about like things like this, that's just a cultural moray in which the majority of the people just don't care about deaf people, so we don't do anything to help them.
And so why would the police?
Why would the police? I mean, so like I was saying before, I had this police officer on my radio show a couple years ago, and I'm not going to mention his name, but he said to me this, and it always stuck with me: "We get our authority over you from you," which I thought was really interesting for a cop to say, because I mean, this is the legislators make the laws that the police enforce. The legislators are the politicians who are elected into office.
Okay, yeah,
that's how it works. Now, it's not nearly as straightforward and simple as that. There's all sorts of problems with our electoral processes.
He's got a, not to cut you off. He's got a good point, as in, like, now how you can see how marijuana is becoming more legal. Okay, right. In my lifetime, I watched a lot of people in the celebrity culture openly talk about smoking weed, right? So the people who vote, which are people who are my age, who are starting to get that power. I'm 30 years old now. They're starting to get that power, right? These are the people who are having children and things of that nature, are starting to vote in a different way, right? So now we see the marijuana laws laxed a little bit. There's other reasons why, but it is also because we didn't grow up with the reefer madness mindset. You see, we grew up and Snoop Dogg was cool. 50 Cent was cool. You know what I mean? So we did end up voting like, weed, like, you know what I mean? And so he's right to an extent, and that is why it isn't. He's right in the way of, it's important to be aware. There's still things that are going to push on us, but once we become aware, I mean, as culture, we do dictate, you know what I mean, what goes on. Like, that's why there's harsher gun laws in Chicago than in Nebraska, right? Because the people in Chicago have had much more of an issue with gun violence than those in Nebraska. So he's right to a great extent. It's just there's this thing that I think a lot of people don't realize about any type of governmental system. My lifespan is 70 years. Your lifespan, 70, 80 years, right? These governmental systems do not think in 70-year terms, right? And actually, our political life is much shorter than that. It's about 20 to like 45. You really care about politics and you actually will be amped up to implement change. 45 on, you're already established in who you are. You've got children who are 12, 13, whatever. You're kind of on the back end, right? So that's only 20 years. These governmental systems, they think in hundreds of years. They don't even think in years, if that makes sense, right? So it's all just a wave for them. A lot of people don't connect that. So yeah, that's my response to his.
No, that's a really good point. I think a lot of the laws, if not, well, I don't know about all of them, but the vast majority of them are made to protect the governmental institution itself and its longevity.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the system itself doesn't care if weed is legal or not. You know what I'm saying?
they
It was illegal for 50, it was illegal for 100 years. It could be illegal for the next 100 years. Like the system itself doesn't care. It is a reflection of, like that police officer made a point of where we're at, right? That's why prohibition didn't last. People were like, I want to get drunk everywhere.
Yeah, that was just a hot second there in American history because I was like,
you see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, no, for sure. And one thing I think is important to note as well is that, and I said something about this, I think the last time we talked a little bit at the end of the show about policing, is that a person, like, I have a philosophy degree. I've studied ethics for decades. Morality is extremely important to me. Okay, as it should be for everybody. Morals are by definition the way you should be treating other people and yourself. That's what a moral is.
Yeah.
It's a standard for behavior. And when it comes to like rights, a lot of people I think don't understand what a right is. A right is that literally, if you look on it online or go to like the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy and just type in rights, you'll see it says a right is a moral allowance for behavior. A right is a right because it's right. Nobody has the right to do or be wrong. You have the ability to. You don't have the right to. I have the ability to kill somebody. I do not have the right to kill somebody. A big difference between what is the case, what I can do, and what I should do. Huge difference between those two things. And I think it just the definition of a person, amongst other things as well, is that each person is by definition a moral agent. You have the capacity to reason and you have free will. Now, the people will debate over that for sure, but let's just assume that for the moment. And each cop is a person. And if you have free will and the ability to reason, you are accountable for your behavior. We have in this society this elite force of people or elite group of people that have special rights. By definition, there is no such thing as a special right. That's the universality of morality, is that if it's okay for you to do it, it's okay for everybody to do it. Okay, you look like you're pondering. Go ahead. Push back.
Because I guess my response would be that you're right and that's already happening. And that's when I say it's already happening, I mean they're just taking what everybody's already doing to the extreme, right? So speaking as an educated person, speaking as a Black person, the violence that you see on these body cams to Black people, America's doing that to them as well. The violence just looks different. It's with living in a certain neighborhood. It's with not making eye contact. It's with not enjoying the company of said Black person, right? So the police are just doing it in an extreme way. So if you talk about the morality, right, and you are a moral individual, police are put into a position where they can exert that in a different format that is much more brutal and harder to digest, but they're still carrying out the same morality that is mirrored in regular society, which is why people have to say Black Lives Matter. And it's much more complex than just the riot song. It's like, no, like legitimately, Black, brown, whoever, right? Like they matter, right? Because in society, it's felt as if they don't. And you can see it in many different forms. So like hearing you speak about when you said a right is a right because it's right, and you speak about how a police officer is an individual. I hear you, and I would just my only pushback is that they are individuals and they're carrying out what this country is doing. Or they mirror the morality of the country. Right. That's my main point. I won't jump around.
No, I think you're spot on. I would just my only argument against that would be like, treating anybody with that sort of disrespect wouldn't be a moral standard in the first place.
But it is though.
It's
And
cultural. It's a
no,
cultural.
no, it didn't. No. So listen,
Okay.
let me think of the bank. I think it's Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo recently. I think you can look it up. I'm gonna mess the numbers up, but 51% of their black applicants got denied. That's a
Oh,
form of violence.
absolutely.
And if you Google it, I might have the numbers fudged up. But when it came to the white applicants, I think 78% of them, got approved. And when it came to the black applicants, there was much less, a significant less amount. Okay, that is mirrored in policing when you look at the numbers in policing, right?
Yes.
That type of disregard for the well-being or the life status of a black person. And this happens in all governmental systems in America. So you can say, oh, it's not how you're supposed to treat somebody, but the black existence in America reflects it over and over and over and over and over again. It's just when you get denied for a bank loan, it's not the same as getting, you know what I mean, a bogus charge, right? It's completely different, yet the underlying meaning and the underlying morality and thought process is the same, right? You are other, you are lesser, you can be treated, you can be mistreated because you are other, you are lesser, you are not one of us, right? Or you're not on the side that I care about. You see what I'm saying? So it's the same thing.
No, I see what you're saying 100%. I agree that that's how people reason in this country. The white people that have the majority of the socio-political economic power in this
It's
country.
not just them.
It's not just that, but there's definitely something to, white privilege for sure. But I would be hesitant to like look back in history and say that just because the way that they thought morality was at the time, that's actually how it was. I'd like to have a more positive disposition towards what morality is, because morality to me means goodness in the most general sense. Because like I
Well,
wouldn't say because they thought slavery was moral that it actually was. No, it's not. There's nothing moral about it.
so two things I want to say.
Okay.
And if you've probably read this book, it's called Moral Man, Immoral Society.
Yes,
You read it, right?
I know of it. I haven't read it. No.
Okay. Well, it's the best book I've ever read. And whenever somebody comes to my house and they go into my library, I only recommend one book. You know what I mean? Because this book breaks down, to me, the clearest definition of why we have why racism permeates American society. So what you're talking about, you're saying right now, like goodness, morality. Okay, on an individual basis, if you grab a person and say, hey, do you hate, black people or Mexican people or Chinese or whatever, on an individual basis, everyone will say no, right? This is the basis of the book. You're going to say no because as a human being, you understand I bleed, you bleed on a one-on-one basis. The problem comes when you get grouped together in a nation, when you get grouped together by your race, when you get grouped together by neighborhood, right? Because now you begin to be part of a team that competes for resources, that competes for status, that competes for these things. So then if I ask you, well, do you hate, Argentina? Now morally it's justified because Argentina is in competition with where I live for resources. So it becomes something completely different. So moral man, 100% what you're saying. Most people on an individual basis are, unless they're a psychopath, a sociopath, you know what I mean? Unless they're that, they're going to say, oh, I love everyone, right? It's when you get grouped into, a state, a nation, a race. That's when the conflicts arise. And that's the problem that, to me, clearly depicts what's the American issue, is that we have so many groups within here that consider the other group other, right? Right. We all came together after 9/11, you see, because that's the nation, you see.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No.
You see, so it's like that's and it happens, man.
Somebody attacked all of us.
So we were together for a little bit, you know what I mean?
For a very little bit,
that goes away, and you begin to. So yeah, because most argumentation, right? It's not based on the individual, right?
True.
It's based on a group identity.
True.
And most people lack the intelligence, whether it be by happenstance, like if you live in the hood, right? And we're on this block and you're on that block. Okay, you're so deprived, you don't have time to intellectualize your existence. So the beef between you and the other block over the minimal resources that you do have, you can't step out of it, right? A lot of people live lives where they can't step out of it because obviously on the grand scheme of things, we're all human.
Right.
So we're all one nation. We're all one species. We're all obviously, but few people can get to that level, right? And that's why we have the problems that we have, right? Like the police, they don't. Some police do not connect the dots of the residual effects of their actions. Like you do know by you implementing violence on this young man or woman or deaf person, you're making the neighborhood worse.
Yeah.
They don't connect that. You know, most people intellectually, it's almost impossible for them to conceptualize like, hey man, we're all in this together. Like it's me, it's my town, it's my family, it's my nation, it's my city, it's my state. It's few people can connect all of it together. You know what I mean?
I agree. 100%. That's true. You're giving me the perfect like segues. Talking about like a cop kind of in their short term reasoning. Say
That's a good term. That's a good way to put it. Short term reasoning. That's amazing
okay.
because the lawsuits and stuff like that come later. But go on.
Yeah, and they're they're duty bound to just do whatever they're told to do to enforce the laws, however they've been taught and trained to do so. Whether the laws or the methods of enforcing them are morally correct or not doesn't matter to the cop.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's all sorts of examples. All the footage from the civil rights movement. I mean,
Yes.
oh my God. Rosa Parks was literally breaking the law. There were segregation laws on the books.
Yes.
Cop actually said to her, I have to enforce the segregation laws.
Yes.
And I remember seeing that in the movie. I'm like, well, no, you don't. You can just not do it. Say that you could easily say, again, as an individual moral agent, say, this is wrong. I'm not doing this.
I can't agree with you because
you don't think he could have done that?
No, he couldn't have. And I say that because there's like several reasons why I say that, but he didn't write the laws. He's an agent of the state. So literally he does have to follow that. Now, the way in which he does it is up to his discretion, right? Because they don't say everybody who sits here who's black, hit him with the baton in the head till they pass out, right? It's the way he can go about it that he controls, but he must do it because it is his duty. Now, him saying that to her and standing on it, that way of approaching her, it's uncomfortable. But as an agent of the state, you don't have any choice. You literally are like, once again, you're like you're not autonomous fully, right? There's rules, right? And just like you and me, we have families, right? If you're a cop, you might want to become sergeant. You might want to become lieutenant, right? You might want to stay on the force. You don't want to get fired, right? Like jobs are hard to come by, and they've always been lucrative jobs have always been hard to come by. Policing is in the middle. You usually get paid enough to live and survive. So, I mean, his hands really are tied, not to mention back then, if we're going to go with Rosa Parks, do you think he really cared about black people?
No, I don't.
Okay, so he's acting based off of that as well. So, yeah, there was nothing else he could do. Because if he had that in him to not be like that, he would have never been a cop in the first place. Right. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
No, it absolutely makes sense. I'm thinking to myself, like, when I was a bartender for X amount of time, if my boss ever came up to me, and I had some pretty nasty bosses, I mean, some pretty racist bosses.
Yes.
He said, don't serve that person because they're black. I would just, it's not that I didn't have a choice. I would just like, no, I'm not doing that. And I would quit.
But see, bartender does not come with the same level of, what is the word? It's not status, but like it doesn't come with the same level of oomph.
No, I think status works. I understand what you're saying.
You see, and you're not, because cops, besides the agent of the state part of their job where they're doing bullshit, they're also catching, the rapists and the murderers.
True.
So he can do the racist thing to then chase the bad guys later.
Real bad
guys. The hierarchy of policing works. After 8 years, if you're a good cop, or after 10 years, if you're a really good cop, you get to be a detective, which means all that frivolous shit, you're not a part of. Oh, can I cuss?
If you can keep it down a little bit, just because I replay this on the radio, but you're fine. You're fine.
All the frivolous things, once you become a detective, you saw no detectives at those riots. You saw no detectives at any riot. The detectives aren't there. And if they are there, they're in the command center. So I'll do the Rosa Parks thing just so I can then get to the catching actual human traffickers, actual bad guys. You see, so You know what I mean? It's complex, right? You know what I mean?
It's definitely complex. I
I'm
get
not
what you're saying.
defending. Yeah, I get what you're saying, but there's more to it. You know what I mean?
Right. Um, I think that just the notion. I saw this post, a meme on Facebook a couple years ago, which stuck with me. That that in our society that we have a group of people that can demand your obedience
Yes.
literally under the threat of death is not a feature of a free society. I'm like, that's very true. Like we have this,
Ah,
gaggle of folks running around here saying, like, literally, if you don't comply, they get to beat the hell out of you. If you don't comply enough, they get to shoot you.
this is true, but I don't what I can't agree with, right? Because I read somewhere, it's in one of my books that I read, um, like freedom is not doing whatever you want.
True.
Freedom actually comes with doing that what you don't want to do.
Sometimes.
So no, like okay, the analogy that was given in the book, or maybe it's just the analogy that I took upon myself, was while I was in school when I was 22, 21, right? So I'd go to work all day and then I'd go to school or flip flop, go to school, then go to work, whatever. All of my time was taken up between work and school and going to the gym. So
Sure.
technically, I was not doing what I wanted to do. Yet,
I see. What you're saying.
once I graduated, now if my job fired me today, I can go around the country and work
Yep.
because of the education that I have, right?
Yep.
Because I relinquished my freedom. I gave something up, right? I don't want to pay my taxes. I don't want to, obey the speed limit, but by controlling myself and keeping restraints on myself, I can remain free. So with what you just said, the reason I'm saying this is because, like, to say that the police are not a part of a free society, I have to offer a little pushback, because the only reason we can remain free is because of the restraints placed upon us within the society that we all agree to live in. Now, once again, how they go about putting the restraints on us, the beatings, no, the obedience, no.
Right.
So I get it, you know what I mean, how they go about it, but I do think that to remain free, the police are a necessary element, because there'll always be the psychopath who needs to get controlled. And the psychopath without the funds to hide who they are, because a lot of rich people or people who are of means can hide their psychopathy with philanthropy or with something that's beneficial to most but harming a few. So that's different. I'm talking about there's psychopaths all around. And most people in prison are psychopathic, most of them, if you look at the percentages. Okay, so we're gonna need to take
Really?
those people. Yeah, look it up.
I believe you. I never heard that before. That's interesting.
Yeah, and most males, I say the males from my studies, most males in prison, right? Especially the frequent flyers. I'm not talking about the guy in the jails. I'm talking about prisoners. I'm not talking about people in jail.
I get you. Not county jails and detention centers.
Sentenced home invaders, sentenced robbers. You know what I mean? Some drug dealers who keep going back to prison. A lot of them are psychopaths. So you do need to remove that psychopathic element, or you need something that can do that for us to remain free. Because, and I know you're not talking absolutes, like do whatever you want. I get what you mean. We need to articulate a better way to go about the way the police are around, so it doesn't feel as if they're infringing upon what we call freedom.
Right. No, absolutely. No, I mean, I am more free than that there are laws against murder and
Yes.
people to stop murderers than if there were not.
Yes.
That we put a restriction on you taking my stuff makes me a freer person, 100%.
Yeah.
I
You can
agree
go
with
out,
that.
you can relax, you can be like, hey, there's
Yeah.
somebody on the call.
That it's not legally allowable for somebody to come up and just punch me in the face because they feel like it
You see,
is a good. I understand 100%. I would still say that the essential definition of freedom is self-determined, and self-determination. But which I think would still include a society that has regulations on behavior. Absolutely, because freedom does not mean to literally to do whatever you feel like doing. It does not mean that. It has never meant that. It never
and,
will be that.
well,
Okay.
and I love that we're talking about this, and I hope somebody really takes this into account, because I have people that I know from high school, and in my early 20s who I was jealous of. I'm like, man, I'm hitting the books. I gotta go to work. You know what I mean? My girl's mad. We're not hanging out. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I felt like they were more free than me because they were, waking up at noon, doing whatever they wanted,
Partying every night.
But now, right, they're restricted and they can't do anything. They don't own homes.
Right.
They don't have any resume. They can't demand a certain amount of money. I'm on the cusp. Once I finish getting my PhD, I'm on the cusp of being able to create curriculum and demand my price for career. You know what I'm saying? Like because I relinquished doing whatever I wanted to do what needed to be done.
Gotcha.
Now I'm freer than I've ever been. You know what I mean?
Beautiful.
So, you know what I mean? Like, so I'm glad we're talking about this because outside of the policing and political things, I think the thought process on what constitutes freedom and what you need to do to remain free needs to be ironed out for the younger generation. You know what I mean? Because there's this thing that's happening with the internet. You think you can just be an influencer, just go on TikTok. You just think that's like, and that's not, you can't skip steps, right? If you want to actually be free, you got to relinquish something, pick a sacrifice, you know what I mean, and iron it out. You can't just skip to anything, you know what I mean? Because like you said, freedom is self-determined, but you got to be determined to do something. You can't just...
Yeah, no, and yeah, absolutely. And you're, as a moral agent and individual, you're also accountable for your behavior. So like, if you are responsible for what you do. So if you want to get to point C, you need to go through A and B first.
100%.
You want to play the drums, you have to start off going dish, dish,
absolutely
dish, before you can go. Okay, that's just how it goes. Okay, so Albert Shaw is asking the question: do you both believe that certain levels of education should be required in order to be accepted into a police academy? Go ahead. I'm guessing he means after high school.
I 100% agree that there should be a higher educational standard because as the world becomes more technologically advanced and as I can Google laws on my phone, and they're even having AI, do lawyer work, right? Artificial intelligence. So as the world becomes more technologically advanced, your police force has to become more technologically advanced, which means that the educational requirements should be higher. And there's already enough statistical data and analysis that says higher educated police make better decisions, right? Now, the complex problem with policing is that you get white collar respect, but it's a blue collar job.
Right.
So to find somebody who's going to go and get, a bachelor's degree or a master's degree to then, chase bums out of a park at midnight. Like, you see, it's a complex thing, but the 6'4" dude who couldn't go to the NFL and barely graduated high school, he'd love to do that. You know what I mean? Like that's what, you know what I mean? Like, so yeah. It's a complex thing, but absolutely in an ideal world, I want all of my police educated in ethics, morals. I want them educated in racial dynamics. I want them educated in feminism. I want them educated in all that because that's what they're going to be interacting with in society, right? I want them to be moral agents, right? And to be a moral agent, you do have to have some type of substantial education.
Or just being taught, that, especially ethics, but and critical thinking skills. You 100%. Can be taught critical thinking skills. Like you can be taught how to look at a situation and go, okay, this is exactly what's happening, and actually be right there. You can be taught bad skills. So you look at a situation and go, this is what's happening, and you're wrong in your interpretation. I think critical thinking skills are very important. There's a whole slew of different types of critical thinking methods out there and university level. I believe it's Norway that I think if you're going to be a cop, you have to have a bachelor's degree or something like that. And they have almost no violence.
Fair, before we just pretend to be fair, right? It's also state, county, and all that specific. You're not going to get on a police department up here in DuPage County without a bachelor's. It's not happening.
Oh, really?
Unless you know someone. Yes, because it's so congested and we have such a high caliber people up here by the Chicagoland metropolitan area. Now you can go be a cop in whatever, I'm not gonna swear.
Thank you.
In the middle of Alabama,
right
where there's no college for 100 miles, you can go be a cop just because you want to be it. So that's also what you see, because there is no unilateral, universal standard for policing education, because each state has its own focus and things of that nature. So up here, the cops are highly educated. Like, I have friends who it took them 3 years to be a cop, because everybody who applied, 4 years in the Marine Corps, 4 years in the Army, plus they got a bachelor's degree, plus they did security and ran security for a school or something. Yeah. So that's another thing I want to add. A lot of, if you look at certain places, right, you're not going to be a cop in Villa Park without a bachelor's degree. In Villa
That's
Park,
interesting. That's
Bolingbrook. Look at Bolingbrook's police department. You're not going to be a cop in Bolingbrook, Illinois, without a bachelor's degree. It's impossible.
That's very interesting. Okay, let's talk about some of this possible like between you and I, the possible solutions of some of the problems that are going on now with policing in America. Just real quick, I want everybody to know that you can look this up. There are about 210-ish sovereign nations in the world, about right around 208, 209, something like that. Probably 30 to 50, probably like tyrannical, really nasty regimes out there. Thank God it's not like the majority like it used to be. The American police rank number 6th in the world for police killings per year. 6th. Can you see my hands?
Yes.
6th. Okay. That's crazy. I mean, we're talking like 3 a day.
It's not crazy.
It's not crazy.
No other country, right, has kept the people that they didn't want, right? So no other country has the Negro problem, right?
Wow.
So when you look at it that way, it makes absolute sense, right? There are people who live here who historically, once their utility was taken from them, right? Like utility is in, you're not cattle anymore, right? You're considered 3/5 of a human being and then a full human being. You're still here and unwanted, right? So it makes absolute sense when seen from that perspective. I'm not shocked. I'm surprised they're not number 3, you know what I mean, in killings, because the people who get killed the most, when broken down properly, I'm not talking numerically, because obviously there's less, Black people than other races and things like that. But the people who are under siege, who live in America and view America as a war zone, which is Black people, right? It's obvious to us that, the police are killing. Yes, they're allowed to do that because we are unwanted. Outside of entertainment, right? How many neighborhoods? Yeah, sports, right? It's not that many integrated neighborhoods, right?
No, that's true.
You got to think about it, right? Like outside of entertaining you, right? Like Black people's utility in America is very limited, if or non-existent in many people's eyes, other than the basketball court, the football field. Other than that, you're criminalized in every turn. So the original point was, I don't want to get too far on a rant. You said, number 6, like, or you said a solution to it? Or what was the original point?
How do we get cops to stop killing people?
I think, one of my solutions, I don't know if I said this last time, but one of my solutions would be, anytime you unholster your gun, automatic, you're on desk duty for 3 weeks. If you shoot your gun, you know what I mean, you're taken off the streets for 3 months, and you immediately have to speak to a mental health professional. Why, right? Because I think that the trauma of almost shooting someone, or the trauma of almost admitting violence on somebody, is uncharted territory. So for me to calm down on the killings, every time a policeman has to do something that is ultra violent, I'm talking ultimate violence. I'm not talking about, scrapping with a guy rolling on the ground. I'm talking about unholstering guns, unholstering tasers, tasing, shooting. Anytime that's done, there needs to be a mental health intervention on that individual. They need to be, now this is, when I speak, understand, staffing, not going to happen. Not going to happen, right? But this is in my ideal world as an actual solution. A mental health intervention for any time ultimate violence deadly force is used or almost used. And when I say desk duty, I don't mean like I don't mean it in a punishment. I mean like recuperation time, right? So that if you keep doing this at a certain point, okay, you can't be a cop because you recouped after each one of these incidents and you went right back out there to do violence. It's something in you now. If I never let you recoup and I never get you mentally evaluated throughout your time as a police officer, right? It's like, it's kind of like setting you up for failure in a way. Does this make sense what I'm saying?
100%.
So if you work in these violent areas, okay, we need to staff some mental health professionals in the police department who are talking to everybody all the time, right? Who are figuring out who needs a break or not a break, policing in a different way, policing in a different part of the neighborhood, different duties, who needs to, you know what I mean, take a break. So my actual solution to getting police to be less violent would be some type of intervention on the part of all police departments in the mental health area, right? Taking guys off the street who have attempted or had to use deadly force. And unless they pass the psych eval or unless the mental health professional gives them clearance, right, they're not going back on the beat for a little bit, right?
Right.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I hope it helps. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. That's very interesting. And I think I know that I've been watching a lot of videos of like within the last couple of years, and I don't know if it's because of the George Floyd incident or if I just happen to be noticing more. I don't know. Of cops getting arrested and put in jail
Yes.
for doing stupid stuff. There was a cop who, like, there's an older lady. I think it was in somewhere Michigan or something like that. Anyway, she walked out without paying her $13 bill. She had dementia, and she was confused, and he didn't care, and he ended up like breaking her arm and leaving
Yes.
her in the cell. You heard about this? Well, he's going to jail for 5 years.
Now, see, to me though, from a union perspective, right? Like from a union, like if I was in his union, right? I would fight and say, how many times has he used deadly force or how many times has he had an act of aggression on duty and he got the thumbs up from the sergeant, thumbs up from the lieutenant, thumbs up from the captain, thumbs up from the police chief? Now, just because he crossed the line this time, which yes, he's a moral agent, I understand that. Don't act like for the last 6 years, he wasn't the guy you called to get stuff done in the neighborhood.
Right.
You understand? Don't act like he wasn't the guy who you call at 3 a.m. Hey, we got a whatever 961 on da street. Can you get here? We need more police. And he came and handled business. So what I don't like, right? Once again, I don't want to sound like I'm championing for the police, but what I don't like is how you utilize their aggression when it's useful, right?
Right.
But then when he slams the old lady and breaks her arm with dementia, oh God, throw him away. You knew who he was. You never got him mental health intervention. You never told him to sit down. You never told him to calm down because he was part of the gang unit. He was part of this unit. You didn't. Does this make sense? What I'm saying? What I'm getting?
100%. There's a video of them after the whole incident because at first nobody thought anybody did anything wrong.
My point. That's what I would say.
100%. And there's a video of that cop and some of his buddy cops and the sergeant, if you will, whoever it was, the guy above him, sitting there joking and celebrating how the cop acted in that situation. Like they got her. They got her, man. $13, baby. And then you see the guy, nice job, right there. Well, then, of course, some prosecutor got a hold of it and said, but okay, I mean, I'm not saying the guy doesn't deserve to go. I don't know.
No. He deserves jail time, and I'm happy he's getting jail time.
Yes, but I get you 100%. But like, how did he... And that's the thing I asked. I'm like, why do these cops think it's okay to do these things in the first place? Because they're told it's okay.
They're told it's okay. And I agree with that. The cultural policing needs to change. But it's also because we as a society, right? Like I said when I talked about the Negro problem, my fight or my reason why I like talking like this and why I like to stand on both sides of the fence is because other people need to realize, because when you think of cops, when the average American thinks of what a police officer is doing, they're taking thugs off the street. If you translate thugs, you mean black guys, right? Most people feel like the police are here to keep black people in control so that America doesn't burn. That's what most people think. They don't realize that same level of aggression you're allowing them to utilize on them can be used on you. Does that make sense what I'm saying? No one. So the culture of policing has been allowed to be so toxic because, that's only a problem for them.
Right.
That's a problem for the burglar only. It's not me at a traffic stop, but it could be you when you're 65 and you got dementia and you forget. It could be you see. So the culture has been allowed to be so toxic because everyone thinks it's just a problem for poor people and everyone thinks it's just a problem for Black people. No one thinks the police are a problem for them until it is.
Right. That's very well said. 100% true. We only have a few minutes left here. What about as a solution to a lot of these problems? Because a lot of these problems happen in traffic stops. Remember that cops are military. They are not civilians, which is an odd thing to think about. When I first realized that or thought of it, I mean, I was like, oh my God, that's like a military occupation by our own government. They're just riding around. And that's crazy.
100%. Sworn officers, completely different. Yeah.
Weird. What about just no more cops driving around doing traffic stops? Like when, especially with cell phones nowadays, everybody having one. Like when we need you, we'll call you. I mean, there's no doubt there's a level of crime and above that we can't handle. We don't need a guy with a gun coming up to the car because I didn't use my right turn signal.
But here's the thing, right?
Okay, go ahead.
Now it's complex. So when Michael Brown got killed, right?
Yeah.
The Department of Justice did a study. They had to investigate, and what they found out was, I think it was either 80 or 70% of the revenue for the Ferguson Police Department came from the people from being taxed very heavily on traffic stops and things of that nature. I mean, crazy, right? Like you should not be getting that much revenue from the people. And that's what caused such tension between the police and the people in the Ferguson community, right? And Ferguson, if you've never been, you should go. It's horrible, right? You can just it's the word is dilapidated, right? Now I'll bring that up to make a different point. That process of paying for your police through ticketing is unilateral across the board. Now in better neighborhoods like Naperville, it's like 5%, right? It's 4% of the budget, 3%. Right, we need new body cams. Okay, get some more tickets. We'll get some body cams, and then we'll stop. Other police departments in poorer areas, it was astronomical. Like they're taxing you at these tickets, right? Now, I say that to say this: if you don't want them ticketing people, right, you're going to pay more taxes for the police because it's a secret now. You get what I'm saying? Not a secret, but it's like me. I didn't have my seatbelt on. The city that I live in charged me $281.
Oh.
And when I went to court, there were 70, 80, 90 people in there, all of them, seatbelt tickets, frivolous things, but everyone, 208, 208, 280, 280, 280. If you think about all that money, it's going back into the police department. Now me, luckily I can pay it and I'm not going to go broke. And they give you 6 months to pay it. They'll even give you a year to pay it. So they're not like, if you don't pay it, you're going to go to jail. Luckily where I'm at, right? My only point is that that's paying for the police department, and we have a huge police department, right? That is not good, but they're not bad either, right? Like I feel safe driving around because they're always around and whatever. Different conversation. My main point is, if you do want police to not focus on traffic stops, you must realize that you're going to pay more. And when people hear they're going to pay more, I'll just not speed. You see?
Yeah. Right.
Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
100%. You're making a lot of really good points, and that's why I wanted you on the show, because I knew you knew better.
Well, I appreciate it, and I appreciate it, because I talk like this, and most people just wave me off, or they'll come back 6 months later. Hey, man, I didn't know that no-knock warrants were really only happening in. I told you. Why would I? Well, I didn't know the tickets were. Yes, dude, the tickets that you pay are paying for police cruisers. Like that's.
Right.
Part of the ticket is to be safe in the neighborhood, and part of the ticket is we want to pay our overtime out. So,
right on.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're at the end of the show here, and we got to end it now. But we have a lot more to discuss about you and your art, and about this issue and specifically. I got 1,000 more aspects of policing that we haven't even brought up yet. You brought up no-knock raids. We need to discuss that, but unfortunately, the show's over. So why don't we?
Well, thank you for having me, man. I'll come back.
Thank you.
And thanks for listening. I appreciate it. You know what I mean? I know we don't agree 100%, but I try to keep things neutral, academic if I can.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a conversation.
Yeah, well, just text me again. I'll come back whenever.
Sounds good. Sounds good. All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to the Illinois Green Party series. Host David Rych with our very special guest, Qyjon, the icon. All right. Check them out. You want to plug your info real quick?
That's QYJON.com. Just check me out. Yeah. Same thing on Instagram, QYJON. And yeah, you can see my work. It speaks for itself.
Sounds good. Absolutely. All right, sir. Everybody have a good night. Till next time, be good, be green. Take care.
All right. See ya.
See ya.